Hey everyone and welcome back. And in this week's video, we're not going to be talking about the Atalanta fixture. We're not going to be talking about how we absolutely cruised past what was probably one of the hardest games of this season. The scoreline doesn't really reflect on the performance. To me, that ended 3-0. The two goals that they got were cheap. Once again, poor refereeing decisions, which I think should be looked into a bit more, but it is what it is. I'm hoping that is the referees getting their bad decisions out of the way, and obviously if we come out of one of those games with a win and obviously get screwed over against Atletico Madrid, it is what it is, and then we move on to fixtures where we might be getting a few more penalties. I've kind of missed penalties from last season, but we're not here to talk about Atalanta. Great performance, scored early on, yeah, fantastic. But we're here to talk about contract renewals, and this is something I've been putting off for a while, hoping that Kessie would extend his contract and we can bring it up then. But something came to my mind the other day, especially by the way players like Theo Hernandez played and Benacer played against Atletico Madrid and how Rafael Leao has been playing. I just feel as if maybe the players of 2024, the contract expiring 2024 free agency at that point, there's a lot of important players then. And Maldini needs to be looking at negotiating as soon as possible for these players. And we're going to quickly run through the players whose contracts are expiring each summer before that, so 2022, 2023, 2024. And I'll explain why there needs to be a certain amount of urgency for these players whose contracts are expiring in 2024. So firstly, let's start with 2022. Players of note, obviously all over the papers, Franck Kessie. We know his contract's expiring in 2022. You don't have to tell us every single 3 days, Gazzetta dello Sport or Corriere dello Sport or Tutto Sport. We know it's happening. What we don't know is what's going to happen with the contract. Speculation can be as much as it wants, but we know that there seems to be a level of management being fed up with having to facilitate the demands of Kessie's agents, which seem to keep changing every couple of months. I spoke about a need to get his contract renewed a couple months back, saying it has to be done. We have to meet his demands. But really right now, we're seeing very poor form from him. I do want us to extend him because I hate losing a player on a free. I still think Kessie has amazing value to this side, not just physically and what he gives on the pitch. I think mentally, I just think he's a great player to have. And I'm hoping it ends up with him renewing. But really, things have changed a little bit, and maybe his power play in negotiations has gone down. Either way, we all know about the situation about that one there. Another one of note in the 2022 free agency, I think is quite important to get done this half of the year, is Simon Kjaer. Although I think could easily be done in the second half of the season as well. He's someone who's 31, 32 years old. Would be a simple, maybe 1 to 2 year extension for not that high amount of money. He's not one of our top earners of the club, and he won't require that much amount of money either. So I think it's a simple negotiation. Alessio Romagnoli, also expiring in 2022. That's a very peculiar one. I just feel like there's been no effort to negotiate an extension. Maybe his demands are too high. Maybe he wants to go to Lazio, his boyhood club. Maybe he's tempted to go to Juventus and play under Allegri. I don't quite know, but there seems to be no urgency from either the player or management to get this done. So maybe it's just that he's going, and that just leaves us to another debate of what his future should be. Should we shift him off in January? He's quite an important player to the side, especially with Kjaer is injured, and he does quite well with Tomori, but that's a conversation for another day. And then really out of that free agency class, Zlatan Ibrahimovic is quite important. He just turned 40 now, barely played any minutes this season despite scoring 1 goal. I think this summer has to be his last summer, but obviously in his mind, he wants to play in the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, for Sweden. So perhaps he wants to stay on for another year. I do think if there is a renewal, it's going to be it's going to protect the club a lot more. We've spoken about before that he has a contract. It's kind of like a pay as you play. It's not 7 mil a year. I think it's 3 mil a year plus bonuses depending on how much he plays. So it does protect the club a lot more, which is great. I think there needs to be another level of protection. I just feel like I love Zlatan. I love him to bits, but 40 years old, he's barely playing minutes. I think his body's breaking down. So anyway, we'll talk about strikers in the future as well. And then Andrea Conti, he's going to go in January. If not, he's going to go as a free agent. So that rounds up the 2022 free agency class. Going into 2023, the only one of note of players who gets significant minutes is Olivier Giroud. We're not gonna rush to renew his contract. He just came in the door, and I feel like his contract expiring in 2023 is exactly the time frame that we had intended for him when he joined the club. Give us 2 years. see where we're at that point, and extend his contract depending on how he's doing, probably towards the end of the end of next season. And then at least by that point we know if we've got maybe a replacement for Ibrahimovic in the door, maybe a Vlahovic, maybe, well, who never knows. And then we'll look at the necessity of extending Giroud's contract by a year, but that's certainly not a question for now. The other players of that year of free agency is Plizzari, Tatarusanu and Samuel Castillo, who are basically just, fodder in the club right now. No offence to Plizzari, which I really hope there'd be more from him, but to be honest, he's a player who's not getting any minutes, if not significant minutes. So I just feel like that's not something that we need to take to the negotiation table immediately. I now move on to 2024, and the reason I make it so important, because there are certain players in this class of players of free agency that Maldini needs to learn from his past of negotiations of contracts, not letting it run down too low, knowing where he has leverage, especially in time, and also timing the negotiations where the players not getting ahead of themselves, and timing it when the players forms at an all-time peak. It's quite hard right now because there are players right now in that class of players like Theo Hernandez, Benacer, Rafael Leao, whose form right now at the start of the season have been phenomenal. Benacer's game against Atletico Madrid is the best I've ever seen him in a Milan shirt. Theo, he near enough got 2 assists the other night against Atalanta. It's counted as 1, but it was 2 anyway. But he's been phenomenal again this season. And Rafael Leao is just a completely different player. And I apologise for any criticism I've given him in the past, but I do feel like he has switched on a little bit more. He's engaging a lot more with Pioli now in the system, and the system facilitates him a lot better. So things are just working out on all fronts. And those are the main 3 players from that class of players who go into free agency in 2024. Other than that, there's players like Salamakers and Mattia Gabbia, Colombo, Maldini, Krunic. I think those players can be dealt with in the coming years. I have massive urgency to get the 3 players I firstly mentioned, Theo, Benacer and Rafael Leao, get their contracts sorted out the second half of this season. The reason I say that is because once you get into next summer, 2022, they've got 2 years left on their contract. All of a sudden, the clock is ticking. The clock is ticking. I know what Maldini's like. He doesn't like extending contracts throughout the season. He likes to sort of do it towards the end of the season or the start of the season, if not the off season. And I feel like we lose another year, and then we take it into the following year where they've got 1 year left. I get it. Review it at the end of the season, probably. See how we finish. If we say if we win the Scudetto, get top 4 finish. Maybe say if we don't go through the Champions League group stage and get into the Europa League and we win the Europa League or we win the Coppa Italia. Review it based off performances. I get that, but no later than this summer. No later than this summer. If he's smart enough, he'll do it before this summer. But let's hopefully he takes that to the negotiation table, because we have some incredible players in this class. Theo is someone who can probably walk into most sides in Europe as a left back. He's probably one of the top, in our opinions, for people that watch him game in, game out, especially what he offers from the attacking perspective. He must be one of the top 10 left backs in the world. Benacer is an incredible talent who's just going to get better and better. I really want to see him lined up with Sandro Tonali. And Rafael Leao, I think the way he's scoring in the Champions League and his performances, especially that one against Atletico Madrid, the bicycle kick, a lot of suitors are going to be coming knocking on our door, or knocking on his door in this case, and they're going to be keeping an eye on that contract. So I'm really not concerned. I'm worried that if these negotiations for those main 3 players don't happen soon, I just fear that we're going to keep going through this cycle of worrying about if the player's going to extend their contract, and really it's down to the project that we have here. If we don't have all of the gold in the world to offer a player, or the amount of money in the world, more realistic currency, then where do we evolve as a club? Because we can't just keep taking young players, evolving them as a player, and then obviously there's going to get a point where they're going to want X amount of money, and we can't match that. I get that, but I still think at the same time there's a level of strategic negotiations that have to come in place where Maldini needs to learn from. He's great at finding players, getting a player in the door through negotiations, but I do feel like the weakness that he has slightly is the way he handles contract renewals. Maybe because he's a bit new to it, he puts too much trust in players, to love of the club, the love of the shirt, the love of the environment. I feel like he needs to sort it out soon. So guys, we're going to wrap things up today. We're talking about contract renewals. If there's anyone from that 2024 class of players. So we'll quickly spill them off now. Theo Hernandez, Benacer, Rafael Leao, Salamakers, Gabbia, Colombo, Maldini and Krunic. If there's anyone from that ilk of players that you think requires the most attention to get their contract renewal done first, put in the comment section below. I want to know. In my opinion, it's Theo Hernandez because I feel like he can walk into most squads in Europe. Not most squads, most first teams in Europe. And I feel like he's someone that will probably want the most amount of money from those set of players. So I think he's the one on my top of my list. So until next time, guys, Forza Milan.